Hello, I'm Bess French and welcome to my studio in Wethersfield, Vermont. I'm just getting all the pieces for the Ava show together and I'm getting to finally see them as a grouping, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to the show opening on June 16th. So this is a totally new body of work for me. Before I started working with these micro landscapes on concrete, I was primarily making assemblage work with found objects. And then in 2021, I really became interested in concrete. So I wanted to work with concrete, and my first work was concrete that I mixed and poured inside of cardboard boxes. So I just took some random cardboard boxes, I coated the inside with tape, I went outside and mixed different components together for the concrete and poured it in the boxes. And it worked, and I loved it. And I loved the imperfectness of the concrete. I loved how it looked like a core from the earth, a sample. I'm really interested in nature, and I spend most of my time outside. So this was another way for me as an artist to convey the landscape. That wasn't a painting, it was a sculpture. So then I expanded and I started thinking about the New England landscape, and I've moved 3 times in 3 years. So I've really been in transition and I haven't had a solid home. Now I do, thankfully. But through all these transitions, I found that working on these micro landscapes really centered me and really calmed me. And it gave me time to think about home and to think about a sense of place. So all of these have to deal with a sense of place in the New England landscape. And you'll see there's farm buildings, farming, goats, horses, an apiary. So it's really encouraging the viewer to think about where you live and how you relate to those places. Some of the concrete, like this series right here, these forms are vintage concrete forms, and they were salvaged from a estate in Sunapee. So some of the work is old, which is fantastic. And a lot of the work I poured myself inside of different molds. I really am interested in form and shape. So I have a whole series that was poured concrete inside of old basketballs and old soccer balls that I just found in the woods, and I use them as a mold. Sometimes I'll still use boxes, sometimes wood boxes that I'll take apart after. So I hope that viewers will resonate with the work and find something that you can relate to as far as the landscape, the buildings, the vehicles. And I've really enjoyed modeling in a small way. It's really new for me. I've never done it before, but it's engaging and it really invites you to get up close to the work and really see what's going on with the pieces. So the process is very time consuming. Concrete is really heavy. I work with 40 to 80 pound bags at a time, and I mix it all by hand. So there's definitely a time factor there, and then the modeling on top of that. So most of the time I'm inspired by the shape first, and then that dictates what will happen on top as far as the landscape. So I look forward to seeing you at the opening of my show Aggregate at Ava Gallery on June 16th. And if you'd like to get more information, check out my website. It's bessfrench.com. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Travis Paige, and I'm a local photographer here in the Upper Valley of Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I want to welcome you to my Ava Artist Studio Tour. What type of photographer am I? Well, I dabble in just about everything, I guess, but I mostly enjoy taking pictures of the outdoors. I do a lot of nature photography. I do like taking pictures of especially birds, like loons. I also really am fascinated with with old things. So I love going into older buildings or places like that, and just taking a lot of stills and things like that. My first real big interest in photography, I guess, I was drawn to water. I love taking pictures of waterfalls. I love spending time just at one place and just trying to capture the beauty of the moving water. That then led into probably doing a lot of what they call HDR photography. And if you look at a lot of my earlier work, then when I first got back into photography, I did a lot of HDR work. And that's a method of basically blending multiple exposures, usually 3 to 5 exposures. You know, the images are usually shot with the camera on a tripod, and then taking as long of an exposure of the water as you can, sometimes having to use filters and things like that, and then taking them back to the computer and blending the five photos with a program to combine them. So basically you get all the depth of the range in the shadows and in the highlights. So a lot of my photography is places where I tend to hike to, or bike, or kayak, and I usually stick to one theme or subject for a while. You know, I'll do like a big spurt on kayaking, and I take as many photos as I can of loons or of the area that I'm kayaking in, and I will keep going back to that same space or same place over and over again, because you know, every time you visit a place, it's always different. Either the lighting or the animals you might see, or you know, things like that. So that's kind of what I do. I don't specialize in one thing or one subject, or you know, I just try to do a little bit of everything. So with my theme for this show, it's called a sense of place. I thought it was a pretty, I don't know, I had a hard time coming up with you know, when you're a photographer, you take a lot of photos. I think I have, you know, hundreds of thousands of photos I've taken over the last 10 years. Only a small percentage of those photos are worthy, I guess. But you know, it's I think a hard thing for photographers is, especially for a show, is trying to choose a theme or choose what photos you want for that theme. So I chose a sense of place because, you know, that's kind of what you do with, that's what you want to do. That's what I'm doing with the camera. I'm trying to represent and have other people see where I've been and get a feel for that place that I've taken pictures of. So what I've done in this show is kind of chose two main places as the main theme, and that is images of Paris and images of a favorite place I go to down in Florida when we go down there to visit, called Lake Woodruff. So with the Paris images, I probably took 1,000 pictures when I was there. I was there only for about 4 to 5 days, and I did a lot of walking, probably average at least 10 miles a day. And how I'm displaying them in my show is basically just small images of the places I visited, and I'm using the Arc de Triomphe as the main focal point, and then, you know, all the roads kind of spiral off point, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to show my images in a spiral type street view, wrapping around the Arc de Triomphe, hopefully to make you feel like you're actually there. With the Lake Woodruff photos, I don't know, it's a kind of a wide open space. This picture that I took of the kind of like a huge dead tree, I just love the way it looks, and it's kind of in the center of the space, and so that's why I kind of use that as the main image in the center, and of course surrounding this tree is all the, you know, the wildlife and the things that are going on at this place, and so that's kind of how I decided to do that. So in this show, I'm actually displaying a few cameras that I have gotten, and a couple of them I was lucky to get actual images that were taken with the camera. I know a few people have said, why are you showing cameras? Why are you showing work from by somebody else? And the reason for that, I think, these cameras were taking pictures of places before me, and now here I am carrying on, I'm now taking pictures, with these same cameras today. And I think it's important to kind of come to relate the two things. I want to thank you for spending a little time with me, and I really hope you enjoy the show, A Sense of Place. If you want to learn more about my work, you can go to travispagephotography.com and also visit my Instagram and Facebook pages. Again, thank you for coming to the show. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Cogbill Rose, and I'm in my studio in North Thetford, Vermont. Welcome to my Ava Artist Studio Tour. I thought I would start by giving you an idea of how I became an artist. I guess I don't know when you actually become an artist, because it's probably not when you start, but I don't know when that happens, so I'm not quite sure about that. Anyway, in high school, I had a wonderful teacher that inspired myself and many other girls to become artists and to do other things in the art world. And she taught us that the subject of art is as important as mathematics, history, chemistry, and it's something different about art is that it actually should have maybe, I don't know, a way of expressing the human spirit. That's not really so, I think, in mathematics or chemistry, but maybe it is for some people. Anyway, she inspired us. She took us to museums. We did a lot of painting classes. We had studied the history of art, and I had her for 4 years. And she encouraged me to go to college and major in painting or art. I think painting probably. So I went to George Washington University during the 60s and the Washington Color School movement. The teachers were wild and on drugs and really poorly behaved. And but they were very interested in color and the relationship of colors to each other. And this has been imprinted in my mind really ever since. After college, I became a tapestry weaver and abstract color relationships, textured relationships. And I did this for 3 or 4 years and became fairly successful. I won some prizes, and then I got married and had 3 children. And that put an end to the tapestry weaving and probably most of my art for several years. But things started up again. My husband and I ran a bed and breakfast on the island of Nevis in the Caribbean, and we had art lessons where we gave art lessons to people that were staying with us, some of which people were really good artists already, and then other people living on the island. And we did this for maybe 10 years, and at that point, I started painting again. And we painted with pastels and watercolors and oil paints and acrylics and mosaics and all kinds of different things. And so that's maybe somewhere along the line. I feel like I became an artist, but I don't know exactly when that happened, but that was sort of the root. And so now I thought I would discuss how I conceive a painting and how I paint it from the beginning to the end. So this is sort of a separate subject. No, it's not a separate subject, but it's a interior subject. So I conceive of a painting long before I get the brushes and the paints out. I actually conceive of the painting in my imagination, in my head, as something that I want to do for some sort of reason. And as an example, I've been thinking a long time, I had been thinking for a long time, of wanting to do my husband with his sheep. And one of the reasons I really wanted to do it is because there was something intangible about his relationship with the sheep. It was sort of a love or a communion or something. I don't know really what it was, but it was interesting to observe. And the sheep really had something back towards him. They recognized his voice and his face, and they waited for him in the morning, and they followed him around. And he, them. It was some sort of connection, and there's no word for it really at all. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to paint it. So I asked him, after thinking about it for a long time, exactly how I wanted in my mind to imagine him with a sheep, that I wanted to give him and the sheep, each sort of equal space in the painting. They're both important. And so we went down into the barn with the sheep, and I wanted to, note where his hands were and how he looked down at the sheep and how it behaved towards him, and took pictures. We went back home, made some sketches, small, maybe 6-inch square sketches, and used the pictures to sort of fine-tune the hand placements. And then I took the sketch I made and put a 1-inch grid on it, and then blew it up to the size of the finished the painting that I was going to work on. And I didn't want to, the scale of the painting, I didn't want to make too big because it's sort of an intimate thing, but I didn't want to make it so small that we couldn't look at the color relationships. And so the painting over here that I'm about to show you right here is the finished painting of Jonathan and his sheep. That was after putting the large size grid on the painting. I drew in the edges. I made some decisions on starting colors that probably are tweaked and changed as I went along, and decided I wanted to paint his watch and his glasses to sort of give a feeling of like, this is not an ordinary shepherd from, Morocco or out in the woods somewhere. This is a modern day man that has this relationship with the animal. So I paint flat on a table. I use acrylic paint. I paint with very fine brushes. I paint in many layers. I paint with constantly changing the colors slightly until I can get the right balance of the colors between each other. And at the very end, I'm working on fine-tuning the edges, the straight edges, fine-tuning the colors, and particularly fine-tuning the expressions of whatever the subjects are. So my thing I'll just say on this painting, if you note his hand, and I'm gonna just not say anything about it other than it's a certain color, and maybe that will give you a hint of something you might not have noticed to start with. Then we're gonna go into the other room, and I'll quickly show you where I do my painting. And my time is, oh gosh, I don't know what's going on. It's running out again. I can't keep on. Every time I do this, it gets longer. So there are my paintings, my tables. Started with my first big people paintings that were inspired by David Hockney, who did a series of 83 paintings of people sitting in chairs. And now I have lots of paintings. I don't have 83, but I have probably 25 of people sitting or standing. They're family members. And another painting over there that I've started. I usually work on 2 paintings at once, and I go from one to the other. And I'll just sit down here before I say goodbye, and please come and see me if you have any questions, or call me if you'd like to. Thank you very much for watching this video. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Ann Saunderson, and I'm sitting in my studio at the end of a dirt road in Loudon, New Hampshire. And I'm going to take you on a tour of my studio and of my work and my process for working. One of the things I try to do with great regularity is make collages. And every year, my husband and I go to Monhegan Island off the coast of Maine for 2 weeks. And so this last fall, we were there and I did a whole bunch of collages. And I did them quickly. I did these paintings outside, no matter how bad the weather was, and it was, because it was October. And then I brought them back inside, and I didn't have a studio, but it didn't make any difference. I just cut them up and reassembled them. So this piece here at the bottom was somewhere else, and I got rid of the rest of the painting and attached this back on. This one, I wanted to say that I think a lot of them are very reflective of where I was, even though I did not do anything directly from what I was looking at. I might have done something based on what I was feeling, or the surf, or the seagulls, but it wasn't directly related. But I'm amazed at for me, how much they reflect where I was. I think they really do. Like this one, I think this is either the sound of waves or water or birds, seagulls, I don't know. But anyway, that's how it felt to me. In my work, I use a lot of different materials. One of the things I like about oil and cold wax is that it lends itself to different textures, different surfaces, and I'm really interested in how things feel. Even though you wouldn't be able to touch them in a gallery, it would be still nice to have the sense that something's going on. So I started out both of these paintings with a black gessoed panel. These are on panels. And I hadn't ever done that before. And oh my, it was really a pleasure. It just kind of sent me over the moon. I had no trouble getting going. And my work often, it has a lot of layers and not a lot of intention initially. It's a matter of just building up surface. And so I added some cheesecloth because I liked the way it acted like a scrim, so that the grays had not only different colors of gray, but different textures of gray. And also this one ended up being figurative. She's got a boob, and I don't really know why I saw that. I put that line in afterwards. It wasn't there. It just went right across. So this is a good example of sort of building surface and thinking about, how you lead back into space. I'm pretty interested in space. Doesn't look like it so much in what we've looked at so far, but I really like creating deep space. That's something of interest to me. I've got some examples here of some work that I've been doing on a smaller scale. And again, I have a tendency to work in series, so there's a couple more in this series. But again, I took a big painting that I'd done on paper. These have not been glued down yet. And I cut it up into pieces and reconfigured the pieces. It clearly is a way that I work. And then these, which I'm just going to stack up, are part of a group of 4. And I know they probably don't look like they go together, but they were done simultaneously so that I could let them dry somewhat before I had to go back into them. I would have another one to be working on. And these, I put some tape down, and the cold wax is, again, you know, makes that top layer especially really powerful. And you can see here how I've covered up, except for there, and this color blue on top of a dark color and then a light color makes those lines. In terms of themes, sometimes I have things that I'm really after. And of recent, I've been intrigued by the idea of mechanical, man-made shapes, pieces of things that are recognizable against a kind of chaotic, organic feeling with the rest of the piece. And making those things work together is, for me, quite an effort. And who knows how successful I am, but anyway, that's something that I work towards. And in this piece, there was a painting underneath that failed, and my work would be so valuable just because I've used so much paint, even though you can't see it. But here there's a lot of texture. Actually, all over there's a lot of texture, so I knew that for my more organic part, I was going to want to make use of that texture. And so when I started covering up the old painting, I could see that leaving some of it would be kind of effective. And then I built this thing, which just, it leaves the viewer going, huh. And I like that. I like leaving the viewer going, huh. What's she talking about? And it isn't really, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about. It's whether the viewer kind of gets a look and goes, huh. And I have another one here that sort of does the same thing, I hope. And here I've got a building structure of some sort. And again, I'm got this organic crashing thing coming down, maybe. But I liked the contrast of these two areas a lot. And I worried a little bit about this river going through, but then I decided, I think I titled it Pressure, because I kind of liked the idea that there was pressure coming down on this form below. So this piece, I did fairly recently after I had a workshop up in Bennington, Vermont, at the North Country Studio Workshops. And a friend of mine was working on some very small metal sculptures. They were about this big, and they hung on the wall, and they were stitched together. And he talked about mending and how he actually wished that he'd done a fiber arts workshop where he could have mended things. And I was really touched by that. His wife died a year ago, and he's been sort of recovering, and I thought of the mending as part of him putting himself back together. And so I've been working with sort of big industrial shapes, and I like the contrast of organic parts with things that are sort of monumentally man-made. I like that contrast a lot. So this painting is oil and cold wax. It's got multitudes of bad paintings underneath it, but I'm really pleased with the result of the final one. Thanks very much for coming to my studio and viewing my work and learning about my process. I appreciate it. Thanks very much for coming to my studio and viewing my work and learning about my process. I appreciate it.